Hello, Governor. What brings you here to this here London town? Oh, hello, child. I'm William Blake, and I'm just wandering, I should say, through each chartered street of your town. Would you maybe point me in the direction of those palace walls, with the blood and the crying and all that? Yeah, it's over there. Oh, what's that sound? Oh, that sounds like a youthful harlot's curse, it does. Oh, what's that other... Oh, it's the sound of the Little Lang.
Cracking conversation, analytical interpretation, and igniting imagination with the Little Lang Gang.
Oh, welcome back, guys.
I'm tired now, I'm going to go.
Oh, that genius introduction was from the mind of Mr. Grimmett.
What hurt?
Actually, it's from William Blake, not Miss Grimmett.
No.
He's,
Sorry.
He had an out-of-body experience and William Blake took over.
I don't know where that came from.
Right.
But we are, if you hadn't worked out already, talking about William Blake's London this week, guys. And as always, we will start... Oh, actually, we'll start by saying who's here. It's the usual Miss Graham.
Miss Gough.
And this time, who's looking...
Mr. Grimmett, I'm sorry, yeah, Mr. Grimmett.
Mr. Grimmett's looking quite pale today, don't you think?
He is.
Quite shrimp-like.
Well, I was just telling the other teachers that I went to Baba Gump's shrimp restaurant yesterday, and ate so much shrimp that I started turning grey, as my family pointed out.
What kinds of shrimp did you have, though?
Every single different kind of shrimp.
Fried
There
shrimp,
was too many
prawn
shrimp.
cocktail, shrimp cocktail.
Yeah, it was based on Forrest
Shrimp
Gump.
soup.
Yeah. Nice enough, right.
So,
Nothing to do with London.
just Mr. Grimmett's had shrimp.
Yeah, he was in London though last night. So there you go. There's the link.
I'm the
There's
perfect
the
person
link.
to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because I did wander through one of the chartered streets of London.
Okay.
This is ideal. I can tell you all about it as we go through the poem.
The story of London, the story of Mr. Grimmett's food. So, context of William Blake then. Anyone want to start off?
He was a romantic poet.
What does that mean?
He had the belief that God and nature were the most powerful things in the universe, and as a result, kind of, it explains why he's so angry that this world that has been created by God and nature is so heavily chartered and controlled by people.
Yeah. There you go.
So he was a very romantic poet, but he also took aim at authoritative structures
He
above
did.
him,
Yeah.
such as the government and also the church, who was very, very critical of the church, and child labour, because I believe the church were responsible for a lot of the child labour going around, were they not?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe so.
Sorry, I completely got
Good.
distracted and I didn't hear a word you said.
Miss Graham's not focused. Let that be on
Oh,
record.
lesson to you: don't focus and you'll fail.
Good.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Contextually, I don't know if there's anything else about
I
this
have
poem.
got some context
Yeah,
about
go
this
on.
guy. He originally wrote. There's a line in it when we come to it. Mind forged manacles. That used to be called. It used to be German forged links, and then he changed it. Don't know why it had the German forged there bit at the start. But it does show his shift in political sympathies, because basically at the time, a lot of people were writing about manacles when they were talking about oppression in terms of the authorities, and he was a huge supporter of Tom Paine, who was a supporter of the French Revolution. So anytime you were making those kind of political statements, it was showing your sympathies towards it. And he also wore a red hat in
Fascinating.
in the streets of London in the summer of 1792.
Please explain why.
Because
And a blue one in 1973.
it's to do with the French Revolution, okay? So when people wanted to show solidarity with the revolutionaries abroad, they put on this bonnet rouge, because I cannot
Rouge,
speak French. It was a
English is
pointed
a
red
struggle
cap.
English is a struggle as well.
too.
Right, so he wore a red cap
Yeah.
to show that he was in favour of the French Revolution
Yeah.
abroad. So what's really important, I suppose, is that the French Revolution was taking place at this time,
1789 to 1799.
right, just across the sea.
The sea, yeah?
Now, the French Revolution, it's important to understand that is when the kind of the normal people of the country were getting tired of the aristocracy
And the reign of
i.e.
terror
the
and
people in
things, yeah.
charge
Yeah.
having all the power over them.
Yes.
And so they started to fight back. hence the word revolution.
It's what Les Mis is based on, isn't it?
It's what Les Mis. So yeah, if you want to know more about that, check out Les Miserables. Is that wrong?
I don't know.
Right.
Les Miserables.
Victor Hugo novel as opposed to the musical.
Yeah, come on, Mr. Grimmett.
Of course, yeah, all the
Got
musicals.
to promote literacy.
I prefer musicals. Actually, I don't.
Mr. Grimmett's working on his own musical. So...
Oh, yes, plug in the Macbeth musical. Will be available sometime in the next 5 years. If you want to sing, please get in touch. Nobody wants to do it with me. Right, okay. Language. On the language of London. So,
right, the poem is full of semantic fields. The first one I've written down is sound. I know we're going to talk about sound when it comes to structure, so I won't go into that too much now, but if you look through, there's plenty of words that associate with that. There's also semantic fields of restriction, so words such as manacles, that Miss Gough was just mentioning.
Chartered.
Chartered.
yeah.
Yep. There's death as well as a semantic field. So we've got black, blood, blasts. Note the way they're often plosive sounds.
Yeah, and you've got like contrast as well, like semantic field of life and death. Because you've got the infants and then the plagues and the curses, which signify death, and then the marriage hearse.
So you've got all this language about death. Why do you think William Blake has decided to use all of those words in this poem about London?
Because that's the reality of London at the time. And without that change from the government or from people on the streets, it was going to continue. So he's making this statement.
Who do you think he blames for all of these things? This is a
government.
message to somebody. It's the government.
The government,
Perhaps the church as well.
And
the church, yeah.
I think my opinion of it is he often views the church as quite a hypocritical institution in the sense of it talks about love thy neighbour and being good people. Yeah, I think his accusation is that they're not really doing anything.
And
it's all in name.
and behind closed doors, there's corruption.
Right.
That needed to be brought to light.
Why did you look at me like I was saying something stupid?
Because I was thinking something stupid in my head, and that was my facial expression. Now what you're saying, is perfectly. I was going to say perfectly adequate, but no, it's perfectly interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's full of semantic fields. Have a little look through, and of course, you can comment on that for AO2. And there's also numerous metaphors throughout. So first and foremost, the Mayan forged manacles, which of course we've already discussed briefly, is on line 8. Essentially, society enslaves them, or do they enslave themselves in a sense of it because they're mindful, so are the population of London keeping themselves trapped?
Yeah.
Well, there's that saying, isn't there, that bad things happen when good people do nothing. And I think it's that things like that happen. The Nazi regime happens when people just are kind of locked in their own minds about certain things, and the chains that the government put on you get so far deep entrenched into your brain, you can't actually break away from it.
No.
So those mind-forged manacles, as you say, are they self-made, or are they imposed upon by bigger structures?
I was just wondering why it's the mind-forged manacles I hear.
That's
Manacle is
interesting.
something you'd see. He's using
mind-forged, you wouldn't see, would you?
No, but
at all, because it's
linking to the idea that there's that cry in every man, in every infant. So it's almost like the manacles are now becoming the sobs in society.
that they are
That
represented
joins them all
through the
together.
crying.
They've been put in that. They've been repressed in that situation.
They can't stop.
Yeah.
They can't stop being upset. They're chained and imprisoned in their own sorrow.
Oh, that's a nice metaphor.
that's lovely.
Deep.
Thank you.
And that is why
I
we
also
invite
have my
you to
own
these.
poems that you can study.
I think we've invited Mr. Grimmett because my Year 11s actually said they enjoyed his podcast the most because they like hearing him feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's another metaphor on line 11, and onto 12, and the hapless soldier sigh runs in blood down palace walls. Mr. Grimmett, you wanted to talk about hapless, I think, didn't you?
Yes, I did. It's one of those words that is
T2.
it's T2 vocabulary. It's not the everyday language we use, T1. It's that kind of more slightly specialist, less...
But not taught explicitly on the curriculum.
No, it's not. So hapless, I suppose hapless rather means hopeless. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So a hopeless soldier, that says actually quite a lot, doesn't it? There's a lot of commentary just in that idea of a hopeless soldier.
soldiers aren't in charge of their own actions, really. They are sent by larger,
As we've seen.
bigger structures, organisations like the government. So the implication there is that soldiers are being sent to do things that really they have no hope in succeeding. They are basically being sent to their deaths, because that's where soldiers generally go.
Yeah.
The fact that they're sighing does imply that they are aware of that, and perhaps even they are disenfranchised, and it's the state of London and the country they live in that they don't perhaps want to fight for it.
There's no patriotism there, is there?
That absolutely, he's saying that.
Yeah.
I think.
I like the metaphor that the sigh runs in blood down palace walls, like an accusation, like it's staining the palace.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it is because they effectively authorise it. And I love that line there as well, like runs in blood, because it's something so obvious, but they're quite clearly in their ivory towers.
It doesn't actually hit the people inside. It's all just on the exterior.
That's excellent point. Yeah, it doesn't affect the people inside because they're protected by the palace. They're the ones sending out the soldiers to.
And it really
bleed.
echoes what was happening in the French Revolution, like with Marie Antoinette and things like that. And
you may need to explain that.
They basically corrupted society. They were spending so much money on parties and balls and food, and people had had enough of it. And there were wars being fought that couldn't be paid for effectively, and people struggling to survive in society, all because she wanted nice, pretty dresses and things like that.
They chopped her head off in the end. Didn't
they did. Reign of Terror.
Right, there you go. And the palace has connotations of all those fine things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That she wanted, but everyone else has to pay for.
Yeah.
With life and blood.
There's also a lot of alliteration in the poem. We could probably spend ages, but it's in every stanza.
It is, yeah.
We've got marks of weakness, marks of woe. So we've got the M and the W. I love alliteration of the letter W because that consonance is a really. We were saying when we did was it exposure?
Yeah.
There's that elongated, exhausted sound.
Yeah.
And then
it's
again,
also the sound you make when you are sobbing, isn't it? I know. Is it?
Yeah.
I hear that noise quite frequently coming from UC6.
Yeah.
That's my room. Oh, okay. Yeah. When I cry.
And then you've got the anaphora in the second stanza. In every, which is
Anaphora, repetition of things at the beginning of a line.
Yeah.
Phrases.
Thank you for
Well, no,
telling
I
us.
don't think everybody will know.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Grimmett doesn't have as high expectations of you as Miss Gough does.
No. No, I don't.
Says a lot about
No, I
yeah,
don't, students.
The anaphora, which I'd actually put under structure, but we're
Sorry.
here. That's fine. In stanza 2 of in every.
Yeah.
It's inescapable. I would always
Inescapable.
think.
It is inescapable, yeah.
And I think there's to go back to the alliteration, I think there's tons of it because it's like we're talking about London being confined and constrained, and so's the language. So, and again, we're going to come back to this with structure, like we've mentioned with the anaphora, but there's other things too. But it's like the language can't escape its patterns. It's stuck. It's in a rut. It's in a routine. And then something needs to come that breaks it out.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think
to the manacles.
that's right. Moving on to structure then, there's a lot that echoes that. Did you just say that?
No, we're not done with language.
Are we not done with language?
No, we've still got
I thought we
onomatopoeia.
talked about...
Miss Gough wrote down onomatopoeia, or she mentioned it.
I think
and
you were talking about the
oxymoron.
repetition.
Did I
And
say
then we come to the...
onomatopoeia?
You did.
Did I?
Then you said it sounds like a man on a pier.
Right.
Remember all that?
Yeah, it was a bunch of nonsense.
The sigh.
What is the...
I guess we've kind of addressed it. This
Right.
is a shambles. This is an absolute
Well,
shambles
it's
of a
not.
podcast.
I'm just going to go backwards. Okay, so you say onomatopoeia. Where was it?
Oh my god, that's pretty from my hands. It comes back to the hapless soldier's sigh is almost onomatopoeic.
Yes.
But I guess
So
we kind of
again, I
crossed that
suppose we've already talked about that in a way.
Blasts.
You're a guest on
That's
this
the one.
podcast. I'd pipe down if I were you.
Blasts.
Plosives.
No, but that's the
Okay,
onomatopoeia.
I don't-
Blasts. It sounds a bit up.
Okay,
It
yeah,
does sound a bit like...
it does. Yeah, really, really, really creating that imagery of something really, really blowing up. That little sound.
Thanks.
And you wanted to talk about the oxymoron at the end.
The
Yes,
marriage
you
house.
did want
What a
that.
lovely phrase.
Yeah,
Go
marriage
for it.
house. married. It has gone Gough. Connotations of life, livelihood, things like that, like till death do us part. And then it's immediately followed by that hearse, which is obviously the coffin, and the way they used to carry it down. Well, it is still called a hearse even now today, isn't it?
Today is.
And although you have that kind of imagery of livelihood, it's being taken away, like as if life is being ended too soon. And that is exactly what's happening, because you've got infants crying, they're being cursed. And it's being, it's not the literal plague, it's the metaphorical plague of society.
Yeah, it's even in the hopefulness of marriage, there is kind of disease.
Yeah,
and I kind of think that links with the juxtaposition previously. You've just mentioned harlot, and is that not part of the plague of marriage?
Yeah.
The symbol of hope, that you've got people in such desperate times and desperate
Being
situations. They've become prostitutes, which blights this idea of marriage, because people are not only of those women would be deemed unmarried. Marriageable, not marriage material.
Not marriage material.
Yeah, but also men would be going to them, which would, sully them, sully the relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
All of that, I think
it could also be to do with, I'm thinking here about like ignorance and want from A Christmas Carol. Like without education, you have greed, you have ignorance in society. So is it that as well?
And crime as well.
Crime, is running rife because...
Well, it's funny you mention A Christmas Carol, because when he's after he sees the door knocker and he's going upstairs, he thinks he sees a locomotive, like train, hearse coming down the stairs. So it's one of these things that kind of foreshadows the supernatural entity of Marley coming, but there is that the idea of death there as well, and a locomotive being a very long, large, big thing. So death being a big thing, perhaps.
Yeah.
Dickens is talking about the state of London as well, death being rife amongst people. Yeah. And here, William Blake, not too far away from
just before
Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol, is making a comment about death being...
Yeah. And they often criticise the capital because that's where the hub of money is. Yeah, it's also the place where there is so much poverty.
And the population growth in that time.
Oh, yeah.
Unparalleled, really.
Well, that's when you've got people, there's not enough jobs, you've got people being prostitutes and turning to crime like that, which then infects even the healthy marriages.
Quality of life.
Literally, with diseases.
Yeah, all those STDs.
Damn them.
Do you want to talk about your repetition now? You can talk about it now.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, no. So, repetition... throughout, you've got words like, we talked about this before, didn't we? Chartered in every... infants, repeated.
Times.
I think getting that emotive element across there. So
didn't you say about the hearers? I hear as well. Oh no, that's the bit we're talking about at the bottom. Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
let's go into it.
Moving on to structure, I would say, because we've got that, the repetition of everybody's affected by this this kind of sort of terrible kind of, what would you call it, is really kind of regime of the government, I suppose, or the ruling classes. But things like chartered, basically meaning
rented.
Rented and owned. Everything is owned, and it's interesting that even the river that flows through London is owned. You can't own a river. Not really, because it changes all the time.
Yes,
it's the different molecules of water constantly coming through. But in London, it is owned. Everything is owned.
And you can link that to his romantic ideas, can't you?
Yeah.
Because how can you own something so natural, but yet somehow London's managed it somehow?
Because it used to be
wrong.
The original version when he was first drafting this. It said Dirty Street and then Dirty Thames.
Right.
It's almost like he's changed it to make it more of a political statement.
So he's taken that aim, away from just London in general to actually the government, the people who own these places. Yeah. It's their fault.
It is their fault.
It's their fault.
I mean, the poem's also in iambic tetrameter, which is 8 syllables a line, 4 stressed, 4 unstressed, which we were talking about again. We don't need to go over it, but it just makes it very constrained, very rigid.
Fits in with the 4 lines as well, and that
the
rhyme
stanzas
scheme,
and the rhyme scheme. All of it. It's just the whole poem is like this. I've always felt this man is furious, but he is so structured because he either has to be, because he's so angry. If he breaks that structure, then this would end up becoming
Anarchy.
anarchy.
So just a rant, uncontrolled.
And also because he too lives in this shattered London, so he has to stick to it. It's like, but I would say I think this is one of the angriest poems in the anthology.
Yeah, if he were to get his revolution and he was to write another poem about London, we'd feel that it would be far more free in its structure.
Yeah.
Whereas this one has been written in the, I suppose in the cold heart of a difficult time, and it is that rigid, and he's trying to get that across through the structure, really, isn't he?
And I know this is going back to context a bit as well, but this actually comes from Songs of Experience. And he has two separate kind of anthologies. One is Songs of Innocence, where it talks about childhood and things like that. And when you see it, that digression from the innocence to corruption in.
So this is from the corruption.
Songs of Experience, yeah.
Songs of Experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are not part of the innocent ones, really.
No.
And he probably would have been, by a few people, kind of feared, perhaps, with what he was saying, because
He's got a platform, hasn't he?
Yeah,
He's
because like even people like Wordsworth, who originally supported the French Revolution and then backtracked when they realised how out of control it became. People probably would have like feared things like this being said or being too critical, because there could be like
It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's
dangerous to do.
dangerous.
Yeah, so people want to get rid of people like that, so they don't cause any trouble and riots. They're scared.
I was going to say, you mentioned about the perspective, the narrative. Who was it? One of you mentioned the narrative perspective of I.
Oh yeah, so when it's I wander through each chartered street, he like positions himself as an observer in London, and then it moves into everyone. So it goes from the singular, the personal pronoun, to the collective, and that movement's quite interesting.
I think it's showing us that it gives it a reality, doesn't it? I think that
perhaps
we're with him going, and we're seeing from our point of view, we're with him, and then we see, everybody's affected by this.
Well, I kind of like the fact that the poem is simply just called London.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, because when you think of London, I think a lot of the initial thought is of, majesty and history and culture, but actually there's this really seedy underbelly, even today, especially in Blake's day, this really seedy underbelly that isn't really seen.
No.
It's hidden behind all of that, and just calling it something as abstract as London, I think is quite representative of that.
Giving it a fresh take on things that have been hidden in previous times.
It is. I
perhaps.
mean, it's a bold statement to say that this is London. You have a lot of people who disagree with that and say that London is, even at that time, was a place of opportunity and beauty and culture. So this is one side. This is one person's vision of London. We kind of need to remember that. And he's saying that this is it. He's very confidently, very boldly saying that London isn't anything else. London is this, hence the title.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then he has to become... So he goes from being that I to becoming the marginalised in that second stanza. He's like, they're crying so loudly for everyone to hear, but you're not hearing them, so I'm going to do it for them.
Yeah, and that links into this, doesn't it? The way that it goes from... I don't want to... This is Mr. Grimmett's idea, so I don't want to step on it, but it goes through what you see.
I had one idea, and she said I was going to have it, but then...
No, go for it. Go on. No, you take it.
Yes. I was joking.
Yes, I shall have it. It was mine.
Yes, I shall. Here it is, everybody.
Oh, Blake's back.
Blake's back. My poem. It starts with what he can see, doesn't it? It's very much what you can see, the Thames and the streets and the faces, the signs of weakness and woe. And then it goes on to what he can hear, which is pretty much repeated in every stanza until the very end. It's all about what you can hear. You can't really escape that. And we were talking about, why does he do that? Going from what you can see to just what you can hear. And we thought, well, if something's terrible in front of you that you can see, you can close your eyes and it's gone. But actually, if you can hear terrible things, it's far harder to escape that. You cannot really close your ears.
No.
So I think really what he's saying is that these things are inescapable.
That's what they... I don't know how... It's from watching SAS Who Dares, that programme. When they do torture on people, they use sound. because it's inescapable.
Oh, yeah, it
so
is,
they
yeah.
blindfold
'Cause it
them,
echoes, doesn't it,
and
as
they
well?
put the sound in there, and this is like sounds of like.
Who does this? Did you say you do
The
this?
no, yeah.
No, you don't.
Yep, she does.
Yeah,
it.
in the weekends I train to be in the SAS.
That's what people take away from this. Do you know
Yeah.
Miss Graham trains to be in the SAS?
Yeah.
Torturing, just torture.
Just torture. No, but they blindfold them and they play them like the sounds of just babies crying for hours on end because the sound is torturous and it's inescapable.
Makes
Right.
you wince, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, we said, is it because people quite clearly in the palace, in the church, are not seeing that they're raising up this
Yeah, so that,
chorus almost of people shouting and crying to get them to listen?
that's right.
Yeah, to get them to see the pain.
The bad way that they are governing
Yeah.
the town,
Yeah.
the country
Brilliant.
possibly as well.
Mm.
Lovely. Themes?
Yes.
Wonderful. Did you want to make your joke?
I don't have a joke.
You had a joke. You
You
said,
have a
now
joke.
we've heard all that. Let's hear about...
Oh, you were waiting for me to say
You
that.
said, oh, there's going to be a good
Oh,
link.
no, I was going to link, but the link's gone. Well, we were talking about sound, weren't we? And I was going to say, now that you've heard that... No, I didn't. I said, can we delete some of this?
No,
Right.
you can't. I can't edit it. It's all staying in.
It's unlistenable. Wonderful. Speaking of sounds and hearing things, keep listening, please. So we haven't
I
finised.
think they might have switched off by now.
that was...
Yeah. I
Right,
think they might
get
have
on with
switched
it.
Right, power of humans.
Mm.
Obviously, humans I think in this poem, seemingly powerful in the sense of the
Yeah.
government, but also powerless in the population
Yes.
of London.
Yes.
And that links very well with, well, My Lost Duchess, Checking Out My History, and Ozymandias.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Anger.
We're efficient in this bit.
Yeah.
No discussion at all. Let's just list. Anger. He's very angry in this, as Checking Out My History, very much so. And we were saying that Charge of the Light Brigade is an incredibly resentful poem, and anger at again people in charge. The armed forces.
Futility,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, kind of links in with that idea of the hapless soldiers in both senses, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it didn't need to happen.
Yep, avoidable completely. And then last one, this is a kind of obscure idea, conflict of place, that London, like we've just said, this place of culture and royalty can also be a place of like poverty in that, and that this place is in itself conflicted. That goes quite well with the emigre in the sense of the city of the memory and the city of reality, and that the two places are quite different, just like
Yeah.
there's two ideas of London. And then you said about tissue.
Tissue, yeah. So mapping out of places, and like it obviously talks about like the metaphor of life and structures in like the buildings and things like that. And we've got a mapped out place here too, and it does affect their lives as well. So it's not just about things that are structured. Yeah, it's about life.
Nice, good,
Thanks.
wonderful.
That's got to be the longest podcast ever.
I think it probably is one of the longest we've done. Half an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
Half an hour.
Of
Mr. Grimmett's
So-
project.
However, there's so many things in that like this is the great thing about discussing it. Things come out of these discussions that I'd never considered.
No.
And when you talk it out with other teachers, and that's why hopefully you're finding these podcasts quite useful, because we are coming up with ideas that are different.
Yeah.
I think coming up with ideas. I mean, if you just join up with other people, discuss these poems, you'll find other people have different takes on it. What's funny about that?
Just imagining them going, right, should we go and sit down and have a like, little chat about this
There's
poem?
nothing wrong with study groups.
I know. I know, but it's the thought that year 11
We do it.
actually do it. Yeah, but we're paid to do that.
We're not
Not
paid.
the
No,
Little-
we're not paid to do
The
this.
Little
No,
Lang
we're
Gang
not
is
paid to
completely
do
and
this.
utterly unfunded.
Is it not?
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm not
Yeah.
What?
I
Right.
know.
It's been
We
long.
need
You've been
we
fed
need
with
a-
I've been played with Haribo.
Now you can chew it.
Yeah.
Taste.
I've got a
And-
clicking jaw.
And on that lovely
Really
note, Mr. Grimmett chews very loudly. We'll end the podcast there, guys. So that should be the first. With that in mind, we have covered all the early poems, and I suppose next we'll do poppies to go through them in order from here on out to get them done. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope you found it useful.
Bye.
Does Blake want to say goodbye?
Goodbye, students. Till next time.